Welcome to Echoes International podcast, with teaching, interviews and stories of what God is doing straight from the mission field and also within the UK. For more podcasts, stories and opportunities to get involved, check out our website at echoesinternational.org.uk and our other social media channels.
So our first speaker is Emma Shoufi. If I get that wrong, she'll tell me in a minute or two. And we were hearing earlier about how that we don't always need to go abroad to serve the Lord. We actually have people coming into this country as well, and we have an opportunity to witness to them while they're here. So Emma's going to come. Oh, there you are. Emma's going to come and just share with us what she's doing here. Thanks, Emma.
Hello. I'm only little, so I'll move that down. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Thank you for having me. I flew up from Swansea, which I would call God's country down there, not up here, yesterday, and I'm heading back tomorrow, but thank you for having me. Let's move that one on, shall we? So just a bit about myself, really, I guess. As it says, I was with OM for 7 years. I was called to missions when I was 16. I always thought I was going to be an interpreter. I wanted to work for the UN. I loved languages. And when I was 16, God told me I wasn't going to do that. I thought I was going to go to Turkey. I did theology at Cardiff. And when I went to join OM, there wasn't a team in Turkey at the time. And there was a team in Lebanon. In my naivety, I was like, oh, that's fine. That's the next country over. It's the same thing. It's not the same thing. Not at all. And I worked in Lebanon for 6 months, came home quite disillusioned. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and wasn't sure what to do. Excuse me. I ended up rejoining OM and working in London, with Turning Point, which is an organisation that works with the Turks in the north of London and the Arabs in the west of London for a couple of years. And then I moved to Syria. I was there for just over 2.5 years, studying Arabic, working with the team there. And then I moved over to Lebanon, where I met my husband, who is Syrian, and worked there for a couple of years, was seconded to an orphanage there. And then we came to the UK and were married in 2009. We have 3 boys. I forget about this. This is us. So Peter is on the left, our eldest, and then Ben and Jamie. That's us. We came to the UK, we were working, we were trying to build a life here. And one thing that was really important, when I worked in London, I knew that there was an Arabic fellowship in Cardiff. And when we came to Swansea, my husband Ayham didn't really know English. Everything was new to him. I had left a single missionary and I came back a married nobody. And my husband had left his culture and his family and everything he knew and came to a brand new country with a wife that he couldn't support because he didn't have a job and he couldn't speak the language. So one thing that was really important for us was to be able to attend an Arabic fellowship where it was a place where he felt a little piece of home, where he could understand everything that was said, he could participate in the worship, he could sing and worship in his own heart language, he could speak to everybody else. In our English church, he was always on the side. In Arabic church, I was always on the side because Arab men can talk, really. So that was really important for us, and it was important for him to kind of acclimatise to life in Wales, to life in the UK. And we were always connected with that. And as time went on, Ayham became more involved. He was starting to speak. We were both working, but we would travel down to Cardiff, which is about an hour away, every other Sunday, and we would participate in the Arabic fellowship there. About 4 years ago, we were approached by friends that I had in London, and asked if we would consider moving to London to join OM again to work amongst the Syrians in London. And we both laughed. We were like, no, been there, done that. We're comfortable, we have children, we don't want to move. We don't want to go anywhere. No. And because I'd said that we would pray about it, we had to pray about it. So we did that. And Ayham really felt that this was something that he should pursue. Long story short, we ended up with Echoes. But instead of moving to London, we were questioned as to why do we want to move to London if we're already involved in things in Cardiff. And west of Cardiff, there's nothing really. Once you can find people who speak Arabic in Cardiff, it's very multicultural. As you move further along, there isn't much going at all. So we joined Echoes. We came to Tyldesley for a year, one of the best years of our lives. I'd just reiterate what Gareth said. It is transforming. You're never too old to go to Tyldesley as well, so any of you can go. There's my plug. So yeah, we did that, and then we moved back to Wales. One of the reasons that we have stayed in Swansea is that about 10 years ago, Swansea became a city of sanctuary. I think it was one of the first in the UK to become a city of sanctuary. And the council had a contract to settle 20 Syrian families in Swansea, and then they settled them along the west, all the way to West Wales. So there were already Iraqis. In Cardiff, there's a large group of Somalis. There were people from Afghanistan even then. There's a large Iranian population, and then the Syrians came, if any of you remember back to the Syrian war, because there's been a few in between. So we started working amongst the Arabs, friends that we know, people that we know, in Swansea. We had connections with a few churches who were working, trying to reach out to Syrians in the West as well. And then, yeah, so we've been doing that. My husband now is more involved. This is one of the things he's involved in now. It's called Signpost. It's an international cafe where they meet on a Thursday to try and get, to try and meet international students. It was set up for, but it's anyone now. So there he is at the bottom. There's always food, some kind of meal, or just, it's encouraged by the people that come to bring their own food. Sometimes they'll have a Spanish night, or they'll have an Iranian night, or they celebrate all the different festivals in the different calendars as well. This is my eldest and my husband in a cafe. I don't know what they're doing, but it looks interesting. This guy is interested, obviously. And then you can see there's Koreans and lots of people from all over. So we started this work, and we found a place that we could have a meeting, a Welsh church we could have a meeting. We had one meeting of our Arabic fellowship, and then COVID hit and everything stopped. And I think a lot of good things have come about through COVID, obviously not COVID itself, but a lot for Ayham's ministry moved online. So at the moment, or at the beginning, he was meeting on a Friday and a Sunday with people from Swansea on Zoom, but also there's somebody from Morocco, a woman from Morocco, somebody from the Gulf. We've got Arabs, Syrians that we know in Germany, Holland, all over. I mean, Zoom does get tiring, looking at the screen does get tiring, but it's incredible the amount of people that you can reach. And another thing that Zoom helps us with is that Arabs don't tend to trust each other. In Syria, because the government was a minority, or still is a minority, the minorities worked for the government. So you just assumed everybody was an informant to the government, so you didn't really trust anyone. And even now, Ayham knows in his group, there are probably people who are informants as well. So through Zoom, people are able to turn the screens off, change their names. There is some anonymity while they're meeting and learning and studying together. So Ayham's involved in Signpost. He has this Zoom ministry where they've been going through the New Testament, kind of doing an overview of what the New Testament's about. And praise God, 2 or 3 people have come to know the Lord through the groups, and are able to share with people in the group, are able to share with their families as well. One thing that we realised when we had this group of Muslims or ex-Muslims in a church, and then COVID happened, was that if we wanted to invite new people, no Muslim is ever going to walk into the church for a church Christian meeting. So one of the things that we're involved in now is more of an international service. It's interesting when we think about footsteps to follow and whose footsteps do we follow. Because if you're in the UK, your model of church planting is a building and a Sunday and a meeting. That tends to be what most of us do now. If you're in the Arab world, it might be a house church, it might be a building again and a meeting on a Friday. And then when you're here and you've got one culture in another one, and what do? And we realise that we were basically doing the wrong thing, that Muslims wouldn't come to a church. We couldn't invite them to a church on a Sunday. It just wouldn't happen. So we're involved in this international service now on a Sunday afternoon, run by some Korean missionaries in Swansea. And the aim is to be more like heaven, I guess. So it's to have people from lots of different backgrounds and cultures, to share food together, to pray with each other, and obviously to have a short word and to worship together. But in this way, especially with Arabs, it's not just Arabs. So it's much easier to build up a trust between different cultures. There isn't that fear of being told on. So that's one thing that we're involved in at the moment. When I thought about footsteps worth following, as has already been said upstairs, I guess the only footsteps worth following are Jesus. And so I wanted to look at something that, sorry, let me just get it. Jesus is our model of cross-cultural mission. What better model is there of Jesus leaving heaven to come to this broken, beautiful planet to save us? I mean, I think that's quite a culture shock, really, leaving heaven. And I wanted to look at John 4 and just to reflect on 3 points from that account. So if you've got Bibles, turn to John 4. If not, it's going to be on the screen. I'll just give you a second. Okay, and we're going to read from verses 1 to 27. I know it's quite a long passage, but I think it's important that we read the whole account to just see how Jesus acted. Okay, now Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that he was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. So he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now he had to go through Samaria, so he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans." Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock?" Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I will give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of living water, a spring of water welling up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water." He told her, "Go and call your husband and come back." "I have no husband," she replied. Jesus said to her, "You are right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true." "Sir," the woman said, "I can see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem." "Woman," Jesus replied, "believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming, and has now come, when the true worshippers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth, for they are the kind of worshippers the Father seeks. God is Spirit, and his worshippers must worship in spirit and truth." The woman said, "I know that Messiah, called Christ, is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us." Jesus declared, I, the one speaking to you, I am he. Just then his disciples returned and were surprised to find him talking with a woman, but no one asked, "What do you want?" or "Why are you talking with her?" May the Lord add his blessing to the reading of his word. When we think about cross-cultural mission, we often think about going overseas into a new country, learning a new language, as we rightly should. However, our world has and is changing. The furthest anyone in the world now is just a few hours, and the closest is merely seconds, thanks to WhatsApp and Facebook and things. Not only that, but the UK is full of people from different lands who call this place home. We don't have to go far out of our way to encounter someone who is culturally different from us, and neither did Jesus. Living in a land occupied by the Romans, shared by the Samaritans, Hellenized by the Greeks, Jesus was living in a multicultural situation. Unlike in Old Testament times, when they had been told not to mix with any other nation, the Jews were living among many different nations with trade routes and ports, meaning that people from all over the known world would have been in contact with the Jews. Jesus doesn't shrink away from the others. While his mission was primarily to the Jews, he speaks to, heals, and interacts with people from different cultures. The centurion, the Canaanite woman, and he goes to the Greek city of the Decapolis. Here in John 4, we see Jesus talking to a Samaritan woman, someone with multiple strikes against her. While they were descended from the same people, the Samaritans had chosen to worship somewhere else and so were ostracized by the Jews. They were not a pure bloodline. They had mixed with the Assyrians when they had been conquered, and that's why they were hateful to the Jews. These were people that were hated even more than the Scots hate the English. They wouldn't mix. They just wanted nothing to do with them. And if we look at the map, you can see Galilee's in the north, which is where Jesus would have come from, and he's going down to Judea, or the other way around. But either way, he's going through, and Sychar is right in the middle. So he could have gone around, I guess. He didn't have to go through that. He's gone maybe the most direct route, but he's chosen to go through that path. Jesus stops at a place he must have gone through many times before. This time, he stops and he interacts with a woman in front of him, and he asks her for something. Rather than coming in all high and mighty, Jesus asks for help from her, and that's something that she wasn't expecting. Often, when we meet and encounter people from different cultures, refugees, immigrants, whatever, we often go in with the attitude of trying to help, which is a good thing. People need help. But we believe that we have something to give these poor, needy people. Many refugees have and are still trying to come to the UK. These people are skilled, qualified people who have had jobs, run companies in their home countries. They are educators, they're doctors, they're engineers, they've raised children and they've run households. They are unique and special individuals, and our lives and culture would be enriched by learning from them and not just giving to them. I'm sure the woman gave Jesus his cup, the cup of water he asked for, and quenched his thirst during their conversation, because as a woman she was able to do two things at once, give him the cup and have a conversation. So Jesus didn't go in just thinking, well, I'm the Lord, I'm creator of the universe, I can give. He came in with humility and asked the woman for something. And when we're working with refugees, when we're working with anybody who's this isn't their native place, you're working with people who have left everything, or you're even encountering people who have left everything, and going in with a sense of humility of not, I can give you something, but in a way, what can you give me? These people would be, share their incredible culinary skills, just amazing skills that they have that they've brought If you find people in your community, around your church, around your home, see if anybody is an engineer and they can help you with building projects that you've got. Or if you're trying to cater an event, can they help you with the catering? Of just giving value to people rather than them being recipients all the time of charity, of asking them, as Jesus did, can you help us? Can you give us things? The next point I want to make is that Jesus engages this woman in a theological debate. She changes the subject quite quickly, but Jesus rolls with this, and they talk about history, they talk about the coming Messiah, and what true worship is. What amazing questions to ask somebody with. What an incredible dialogue that is. Tell me your story and the story of the place that you call home. She says, our fathers were here and our fathers worshipped. What do you think of Jesus? Her answer was, I know the Messiah is coming. And how, what, and who do you worship? Again, she talks about worship, and we worship on this mountain and you Jews worship here. Wouldn't we learn a lot from these questions if we listened to the answers? Humbly giving somebody the chance to speak of and tell their story and their culture shows so much respect for that person. You might be an expert in their culture, their religion, you may have lived in their country, but you have not heard their story. It is incredibly honouring to ask somebody their story and to truly listen. As etiquette usually dictates, these questions are then asked of us, and we may have the opportunity to tell our story and how we came to know Jesus and who we believe he is. We may also find that we have more in common with that person than you ever imagined, and you can always get to know them better over a glass of water or a cup of tea. So my suggestion is that we ask these questions. Tell me your story and the story of the place that you called home. What do you think of Jesus? Now, you'll find a lot, the Ukrainians coming over now, a lot of them would be Orthodox. Many of the Muslims coming are, many of the Arabs that are here, the Iranians that are here, Muslims. People that are not from the West don't have any problem talking about religion. It's common parlance, it's a common thing, it's something that's part of everyday life. And so whereas we in the West kind of bulk a bit, there's those three things that you don't talk about, and one of them is religion. In the East, anywhere east of Britain pretty much, it's a common part of everyday life, talking, thinking about God. And so asking somebody what you think about Jesus, we'll probably feel more awkward than they would. Again, it's just a common thing. And how and what or who do you worship? Ask somebody. These things are something that are so important and so part of us. What you love is what you worship. And so just giving somebody that opportunity of saying, can I just ask you a few questions? I'd love to know more about your culture. I'd love to know more about who you worship and how do you worship? Do you wash? Do you do it on a specific day? And as I said, you'll probably get asked the same questions back, and you'll have the chance to share your story. The third point I wanted to say is that Jesus honours this woman. He uses her points of reference to talk to her. She is by a well fetching water, so Jesus talks about the water of life. She talks about ancestral worship, and Jesus talks about the worship of the Spirit. He meets her where she is and communicates to her in a way she understands. For many people, especially those in the East, the Middle East, Eastern Europe, hospitality is the highest virtue. In many, if not all the world religions, we are encouraged to show hospitality. And Jesus himself talks about giving a cup of water to people. If you do that, you're actually giving it to God himself. The Samaritan woman is dishonoured in her culture. She's out in the hottest part of the day, presumably to avoid contact with anybody else, because nobody in their right mind would go out at noon when the sun is in its highest to draw water. She's been divorced 4 times. She's been thrown away by 4 different men, and the man she's living with now doesn't honour her enough to marry her. As a single woman in that time and culture, life would have been difficult and precarious for her, and she was certainly not held up as a woman of honour. She's not out with another group of women, she's on her own, so anything could happen to her. Her life is difficult. When we honour people by visiting them, by sharing a meal with them, by inviting them to our home, in the giving and receiving of hospitality, we show great honour to that person. We tell them that they are worthy of our time and our effort. Jesus visited people in their own homes and shared food with them. And sometimes he didn't even wait to be invited, like Zacchaeus. And he visited Mary and Martha and others. And Jesus, the Lord of all creation, honours his creatures. Cross-cultural mission is just being Jesus. It is sharing kindness and a listening ear, an inquisitive spirit, honour and humility. And that's something that we can all do. These stories, the exhibition is incredible, but God can use each one of you, and you don't need to speak Arabic or Russian or any of these things. You just need to ask God to show you where he's working. And you will meet people when you go into Glasgow. You will meet people on the streets, possibly even on the estate or the street where you live. You will find people who are not from here. To finish, an old Jewish blessing was, "May you be covered with the dust of your rabbi." It was a blessing that meant you had stayed so close to your teacher and had walked so closely behind him that as he walked, the dust of his feet flicked up on you. Jesus' footsteps are worth following, and we emulate him and his example through the power of his Spirit, here in the UK or wherever you are. So may you find where God is working and join him in it. May you be covered with the dust of your rabbi.
We hope you're encouraged and inspired and ready to answer the call. Thank you for listening.